Okay, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Member Elkes? Andrews?
Present.
Fullwiler?
Present.
Lemay?
Present.
Petrie?
Present.
Rico?
Present.
Torrey? Here. Black? Present. Palumbo?
Here.
Okay, I'd like to ask for a motion to accept the minutes from the February 19th, 2025 meeting.
I'll move. If I can-
Motion by Mr. Lemay, second by Ms. Fullwiler. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're going to adjourn the meeting for our public hearings tonight. Our first public hearing is 425 Cadman. I'll ask the applicant to please come forward. Just have some housekeeping here to go through. I'm going to have to list the items, I'm going to list the items in the file. We have the draft staff report from Mr. Palumbo. We have the application. We have the neighbors that were notified. And I have the draft resolution also, a copy of the draft resolution at this point. Public hearing notice also. The public hearing notice will be read, or you can have that waived. It's just a formality. It's up to you either way. Okay, you'd like to waive it, or would you want us to read it out? It's the public notice for the hearing that they're. Can waive it? Okay, thank you very much. Before you begin your presentation, this is for an area variance, which you need to address the 5 criteria. Were you given a copy of the 5 criteria?
It's on your application. I'll show you what we're talking about. It's all right with the chair.
Yes.
Also give her a draft of the staff report. It's also spelled out there. So in your application, you ask these questions. The criteria that they have to look at is how do you answer these 5 questions. This is the calculation of what the variance is for, and this is just the staff analysis on how these criteria are met or not, but you should be answering them. You should follow it. If you get a copy of your application, you want this?
Yes.
Do you have that extra?
Yeah.
You got your application? It's all yours. That's all right.
So you will address those 5, during the hearing, you'll address those 5 criteria. When you're done, we're going to ask if anyone is in the audience would like to speak in favor or against your variance. And then the board members will ask you any questions that they have. And then we will have a decision tonight for you. You're welcome to stick around. So please speak into the microphone. We are recording this. State your name and address, and then proceed, please.
My name is Ada Rodriguez. I live on 425 Cadman Drive, Williamsville, 14221. That house, my daughter is the one that purchased it. She is in California. They're military, and they're looking to retire and coming here.
Okay? Yes.
Again, it's your meeting, you run it, but I would have, I mean, she's filled this out. If you want to just stand on what you've written here, that's fine.
Well,
legally.
we'll have,
If you wanted to have anything to add to those 5 criteria, but they have to make their decision based on the answers to these questions.
if you want to read them and read your answer, or we can take time, we're going to have to take time to read them, obviously. I haven't read it, so I'd like to read it, or you can present them. It's up to you, either way.
Okay, do you want me to read the first?
Yeah, read it and then read what your
my-
reply was. That would be
Okay.
great. Thank you.
It says, describe whether there be an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment two nearby properties by the granting of the such a variance. And I put, to the contrary, it was an old deteriorated fence and it was moldy and it was like, some areas wasn't even fenced. And the fence now looks new and looks better.
Okay.
The second one says, describe whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other feasible method other than the variance. I pay a company to do the job. They assure me they will take care of everything. And number 3 says, describe whether the requested variance is substantial. How substantial are the potential impact to the neighborhood property? And I put that it makes that area looks clean and better. 4, describe whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental condition on the neighborhood district. And I put, I don't think it was an adverse effect physically or environmentally to the neighborhood. And 5th, describe whether the alleged difficulty is self-created. I paid a company and I trusted they knew the codes and they were gonna abide by the permits. I just trusted them.
Okay. So, I'm trying to find, so what the variance is for is the height in the front yard, section 112-12-C.2D. The maximum allowed is 3, you're proposing 6 foot. Now, was the existing fence 6 foot?
Yes.
The fence
It
that was,
a wooded,
was it exactly where this fence is located?
yes, this is exactly where it was. There was an area that I guess, it was so rotted that it was an
It fell off.
area that.
Fell down, yeah.
Is this the white fence?
It wasn't a wooden-
Is it a wooden fence?
It wasn't wooden, no, it's the, PVC.
It's white, right?
Yes.
Okay,
it
I'm
was
just
a
trying to see
fence
something.
before.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay. What is the precedent on that, Chip?
What's that?
Replacing an existing fence?
Well, again, I can't tell you what the answer is on that, but if it's just replacing what was already there, assuming what was there was put there legally, would seem like, at least with respect to the first factor, it's not really changing anything.
Except for the height.
What's that?
No, if it was existing 6
It's
foot.
changing the material,
Oh,
right?
she says
It's
here
just the
on
material.
this,
Even the,
survey, it says
the neighbor is parallel with, actually, the neighbor is a couple of inches taller.
Did you?
Can I ask a question, Rick?
Yes.
The question is, how tall was the old fence? Just as a reminder, everyone, this is the fence that went up without a permit. There was an issue, came
When
to.
did it go up?
Well, replace the fence that was there. Replace the fence. that
I
was there.
think it was added on
Yeah.
to.
Okay.
I'm looking at old street photos and all I see is a backyard to this fence. I don't see anything on the side yard, correct?
No, there was a side, it's just that part is,
it's a corner lot.
that part is
Right.
kind of the front to the cabinet. and
Right.
it's kind of side with the,
So was there a fence here
Yeah,
previously?
it was like a partial,
Oops.
that's the part that it was like kind of rotted and fell down,
Okay.
And the height was 6 foot?
yes. It was parallel with
I think the
neighbor.
question was, did the existing fence,
But then
run-
when I look in the survey, I think it says 5,
yeah,
but the fence was 6. I don't know if it was replaced in between with the survey, I just don't know.
okay.
'Cause
I think the question you have and I have, I know that the fence, the old fence was along Worley. I don't remember whether it went from Worley then to the corner of the house.
It was, but it was, the owner, the previous owner said that it was the wind, the storm, there was a storm that blew it and it was all over the place and then she just took it off.
So when what you replaced now, there wasn't a fence anymore between the corner of the house and going to Worley?
When they
Originally there
replaced-
was, but how many years ago did that come down? Yeah, that's what I think.
Oh, okay, thank you. So these are pre-existing. This
Yeah.
one's pre-existing.
And Gary, I have a
I
question.
don't know what it is.
So let's, before we get into questioning from the board, I'm gonna ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor or in opposition to this variance. If not, then we'll get into the board members asking some questions. And Mr. Lemay, as long as you've brought up something, go ahead, you can start.
Thank you. Gary, how do we define what backyard versus side yard is in this specific scenario? Because looking at the diagram, looking at the survey here, you could argue that this is all backyard that's being fenced in.
It doesn't matter. The part of the house, part of the property that fronts on a yard has to meet the front yard requirement in a.
No, I understand that. At what point do we, in other words, where's the backyard end and the side yard start? Like, I'm looking at this diagram,
Well,
and the question, as I said, I'm looking at this and it's,
definition,
Because it fronts on a street, is that what you're saying?
yes, so there's two front yards.
Yes.
right.
On
And
both
then
streets.
we're gonna, let me look at this, let me look at that survey.
It looks like
while I
she has
answer
no
this.
backyard now.
Great, great.
You get to a point when you're behind the house, Sean,
Mhm.
that the standard doesn't apply to you.
That's really my question, is
There's-
where is it
there's a
considered
difference
behind the
between a
house?
Front yard setback, which is the standard for new construction
Mhm.
can be. And then there's definition in our zoning for some reason defines the front yard as everything from the front to the property line. So when you're behind the front, the most simple answer is when you're behind the front corner or a corner of the house, on an exterior side yard like this, that's where you become to be either the side or the back.
So is this entire fence in violation?
No, just a part that's in front of the house along the road.
So had they gone from that corner of the house straight back to Worley, that would have just been considered
Well,
backyard?
When you get in front of the house, between the house and Worley, it should be 3 feet pipe, and it should stop 3 feet from the,
This is.
3 feet from the
Right, right.
sidewalk, when there's a sidewalk.
I mean, again, looking at this diagram, and I know what I'm trying to understand is, this is,
Everything in yellow is
Is-
subject to 3 feet.
everything in yellow is subject to 3 feet, including the Worley side, which is the back of the
Because
house?
that's
Clearly,
what's
yes.
called the front now, because it's a corner lot, it's a front,
It's in-
This is a front,
it's a
and
front
this
yard.
is a front.
The front
So do
yard.
we really have 3 fronts then to this house?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
pretty
the
much,
problem
yes,
with
yes,
corner lots or
yes.
blue lots.
yep.
Okay.
And the way the section in the fence code says, such fence or wall shall be erected wholly within the lot line, at least 3 feet inside the interior edge of the sidewalk. I'm sorry, I'm missing the section I want.
So this, all the way around to there.
Yeah.
Now, that little piece in the side yard there in yellow, that's not in violation, because that's in the side
Not
yard.
inside, no.
No, that one's okay.
The stuff between the house and Worley.
Yeah,
That's
Everything
okay.
Between the house and Worley.
This was there.
Should be
Okay.
10 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
As
you can see
And I
here,
thought there was a
that's-
section here, I had this conversation with the,
So she's just replacing it there.
Mr. Lemay, do you have any other questions for the applicant?
I've had a conversation with the code enforcement officer, and he has said there's a difference between repairing and fixing and changing sections, but when you remove the entire fence and put up a new fence, it will apply the new code, which is why they sent it to me.
Wow.
This is.
So long as you use
this
the
is
same posts, you're okay?
I
Sure,
would end up
sure.
asking the code enforcement officer how he's.
they probably would
looking
allow,
at
they
that.
probably would allow it.
Yeah, but
Regular posts are good.
Yeah.
But
That's something we can talk about offline, but that's why he sent it to me, because they were replacing the whole thing. I
Yes.
don't know
existing.
if he looked
Yes.
at the non-conforming use
Yes.
section of the code or not.
And that was just like,
There's,
And I didn't know that it was a replacement.
there is no offense to you on this, but, you know, we don't like being put into a position where there's something existing that was done without permits, and then puts us on the spot as to have to approve it or disapprove it or deny it
I don't-
based on that. And I know
The
you,
previous fence was put without permit.
no, but I mean, the permit, the one you just put in had no permit. So your contractor never got a permit. If he
And
said he
I
was,
didn't know. I found out when I received the village letter.
the notice.
And to me, I paid him the money and I was happy.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I received that letter and I have to read it like 3 times. And when I call them, they say, I'll call you back. They even puncture the gas line. I mean, it's the fence from a nightmare because the second they came, there was like 3 individuals that if it wasn't that they came in the company's truck, I would have called the police. They even were reeking marijuana at 7 o'clock in the morning. They started doing it and, they punctured the gas line 5 times in 5 areas. I was in the basement
they never did call.
and,
No, they never called utilities, they didn't do anything.
and my son passed by the house, and he said, what's going on in the house? And I said, I'm in the basement doing laundry because they were gonna be making noise. And when I go out, it was firemen, the fire marshal, everybody
Oh,
was in
because of
there.
gas line.
And then
Yeah.
the guys were, it was like a nightmare. Then I have to call every week to see what's going on because they never call me back to tell me anything.
So, according to these photos, the old fence was, I mean, I'm guessing 3-4 feet off the sidewalk?
Yeah.
Is that the right of way,
We,
I'm guessing?
It was,
we checked, the concern, well, you can't be on the right of way.
Right,
But for fences, we don't have a setback from the right of way, we have a distance from the sidewalk. And this fence is, the current fence that was recently constructed, is greater than 3 feet from the sidewalk.
okay, good,
That's why you only have one item in front of you, which
Okay.
is the height.
good.
And when I wrote up my staff report, I did not know it was a replacement of something that had been there in the
Okay.
past.
Okay. All right, anything else, Mr. Lemay?
I'm good, thank you.
Ms. Fuller?
No, good.
Ms. Petrie?
I'm good.
Okay, we will have a decision this evening. Again, you know, it's your contractor that didn't get the permit, but ultimately, you're the homeowner and you are responsible to get the permit one way or the other. So it puts us on a spot, you know, that we have to now determine what we're gonna do with an exist. No, I understand it wasn't intentional.
what what we planned, it was like put in a fence and keep working.
Yeah.
We also did an egress window, and that one, I made sure that they pulled a permit, and they did everything, so.
Great, great.
We had a lot of plans for the house, and now this.
Okay,
I'm
very good.
sorry.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, 425 Kidman, I'll set that aside. Oops.
We need to ask Gary whether the fact that it's a replacement, does that affect his report,
Well,
recommendation?
yeah, right, when we get to that point, we can ask him. Okay. Okay, we're gonna close that public hearing. The next one on the agenda is for 160 Monroe. They are looking for an area variance for a fence, 12-22.A2C. Please come forward, applicant. Same thing applies. We're going to, you're going to have to address, or we'd like you to address the 5 criteria. Do you have a copy of that?
You know, we do not, we have it on our phone, but would we have a draft? Thank you.
After you've done that, we will ask the audience if there's anyone in favor or opposition. And then if, once that's completed, we will have the board members ask any questions that they have of you, okay? And please state your name and address and proceed.
I'm Greg Perry, it's my wife Kaylee. We are 160 Monroe Drive, another corner lot. Looking for currently there is a current 3-foot, some sections are like 3.5, some sections are below 3, it's kind of the design of the fence. Looking for a 4-foot closed-in fence, privacy fence with a 6-foot section between us and the neighbors, in a side yard. Sounds like the same thing from the person before us. We don't really have a backyard. So the side yard is where our dog and young child would spend most of their time.
Do you just want us to read the full question and then?
Sure, that would be fine, thank you.
Okay, so describe whether there will be an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to neighboring properties by the granting of the septic variance. We didn't see any. There are many properties in our neighborhood that already do have fences that are 4 feet or taller, and a proposed fence, this would be consistent in the style and scale with those. We did list a couple of examples of houses that are, corner lots as well within our neighborhood that you kind of referenced that. We promised to make it well maintained, legally appropriate, and constructed quality material to complement the aesthetic of the surrounding homes. We feel that this is just a really modest increase, and solely for the safety of our dog as well as child, and it wouldn't obstruct any views or affect the neighbors' properties. We actually had an issue at our old house where just by walking him in the neighborhood, a dog bit our dog's nose through a picket fence, which is the only reason why we're asking for it to be closed, because it's not like they were playing or walking past each other. There was a fence in between, and a dog kind of came up and was just really aggressive. So that's just obviously a concern that we have. We don't want to pay unnecessary vet bills to someone else's dog because of that. On the supporting documents, we did put a couple pictures of other similar houses, and then we did have a letter from a couple that a couple of our surrounding neighbors had signed. We did bring an extra one today. Our exact neighbor that would be sharing the fence with us was out of town when the last one was due, and so he signed it as well. Completely okay with it. It would also be a nicer fence than what is up there. It is falling apart a little bit. For the second question, describe other benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other feasible method other than the variance. We really don't see another way because a 3-foot fence doesn't really help sufficiently safely contain our dog. He actually has already jumped over it into the neighbor's lawn, which is why we really just want that extra 1 foot to 4 feet to kind of prevent that. They also have a dog as well, so it would be mutually beneficial for them. The current structure does pose risk to our pet and our neighbor and local pedestrians because it is a very highly residential area. Since we have a 3-year-old toddler, the 4-foot fence just gives us some added security and peace of mind by reducing that risk of wandering or unsafe access. While we realize there could be things like electronic containment, for our dog, that doesn't necessarily provide the necessary physical security or privacy or any other animals potentially jumping over. Question 3, describe whether the request variance is substantial and how substantial are those impacts in the neighboring properties. It is not substantial. It would have minimal to no impact. It's only a 12-inch difference, which is modest. It wouldn't obstruct sight lines or alter the neighborhood's character. Again, as some of the pictures show, it is very similar in line with some other fences that are already up in the neighborhood, so we're really looking to kind of maintain that. And since there are other houses that have it, we think that aesthetically it will really follow the look of the neighborhood as well. So we do feel like the variance aligns with existing conditions and would impact adjacent homes, and the houses directly adjacent to us are the ones that have signed that support letter. Question 4, describe whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental district. No, we already have, a company that is willing to install it for us. They have assured us that they have done other, permits and fences within the neighborhood, and, building codes that will not interfere with drainage, visibility, or natural features. The slightly taller fence may improve safety by keeping our children and pets secure, as well as reducing encounters with local wildlife such as deer, which we've already seen strolling down and in the neighbor's lawn. Their dog has kind of jumped at and then kind of ran back to the house a little bit scared. There's not gonna be any landscape changes or disruptions to trees, utility lines, neighboring properties, and it will blend with the surroundings. So we basically are just asking to replace the existing fence that's there with, just a 4-foot one. And describe whether the relationship will be self-created. The need is specific to our family safety needs, so it's not self-created as we just purchased this house, we closed at the end of March, and we inherited the current fence that was there. And once our dog jumped over it, and then our son started climbing it, with the picket nature, we were like, okay, this is unfortunately not gonna meet the safety standards. We didn't think that was gonna be an issue until those two things happened. And as I mentioned, he's really jumped the current structure, there are other cats and deer that roam the street, so we just wanna make sure the safety of all those are intact. And since I know that he has been bitten by another animal through a picket fence, that's our really only concern with wanting to have the more privacy to kind of avoid that. And with the picket, our son has already tried scaling it, and he's a 3-year-old boy, so we know it's gonna happen regardless, but just something that will kind of eliminate that portion for him is, we hope to grow up, with him in this house.
For the environmental conditions, I just want to note, there is a tree that has grown up through the bottom of the fence, and it's become fairly large, but it's underneath another tree from the neighbor's property, so that tree would need to be removed. It's just like that big around, that would have to, it's come through the bottom of the fence, and it would be in the way. So I believe that one would need to be removed.
I wrote this and I was not aware of that, so I apologize. I
Sorry.
didn't conceal information.
It would, no, when I went back and was looking at it later, I was like, oh, that's probably gonna have to be removed.
So there, this is also a replacement fence.
Yes.
Replacement. Yeah.
And I hate to ask you this, but you don't have the same contractor that lady.
I don't believe so, no.
I hope not.
He didn't say he was doing another one near us, so.
This guy says he's, was.
It's not already built without a permit yet, right?
No.
That's a plus.
He actually said you need to, he's built in Williamsville before, and he's like, you need to go get a permit.
Good.
I thought it was something he did, but he's kind of put it on us, which is fine.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask if anyone are you complete? Does that
Yeah.
complete your, okay. I'm gonna ask if anyone's in the audience like to speak in favor or against. If not, we will have the members of the board ask you some questions. I just got a couple things to clear up first. There's something in blue, Gary, on the survey. What is that?
I assume, that's a 6.
That's where
Yeah, that's the backyard.
Going to start for
So,
reference.
so that's the side yard, which
Yeah,
is
so-
legal. That's,
Our front yard. side
you're not
yard.
replacing that?
So we want, that's the part
It's
that we want to be
currently-
6 foot.
It's currently 3 foot all the way around.
So you're gonna, okay.
So it's not like we're gonna have it 6 foot, like 5 feet away from, the sidewalk, it's pretty far back.
It was gonna be 6 foot to the, I believe, the 15 foot from the sidewalk, possibly. We were gonna go 6 foot down to 4 foot.
The issue is 6 foot's allowed there.
6 feet's allowed behind the front corner of the house, or 25 feet from the right of way.
25,
Um,
okay.
The 3-foot fence has to be at a minimum 3 feet from the inside of the sidewalk.
Does the
So
3
the
foot,
6 foot looks like it works. Unfortunately, no dimensions were provided on
Right,
the application.
right.
So I don't know how far back that should be, but it should be at least, there's no dimension on here.
Does it,
If
Is
it
it
is,
need to be-
if it is 67 and a half, if the yard is 67 and a half feet deep there, whatever we're subtracting 25 feet from there, then it would be,
I don't recall that being one of the things that on the initial application that was denied, so that, I
well,
fully interact with the variance.
if the dimension wasn't provided,
Oh, okay,
the building inspector may not have caught that.
okay.
But
which that's completely fine.
6 feet behind the front of the house,
So is it either or? Because I don't know
No,
the front of the house.
it's whatever's more restrictive.
Okay.
I think unfortunately, we have two different ways of looking.
Okay.
To be
I'm still confused.
careful from behind the front of the house, and I would look at the front corner of the garage.
Yeah.
So it's,
I'm not sure how far back.
There's a fence there now?
Yeah,
There is, yes.
it's,
Right.
it's still 3 feet.
It's a 3-foot picket. Right.
But it may not be in the 6-foot fence that's going to go up, may have to go in a different location. Is that what you're saying, Gary?
if the side yard is, my calculations is 67.5 feet, and there's 8.3 to the back of the garage, and the garage is 21.28. I don't like doing this on the fly.
Well, no, I mean, it should have been presented if we need
Yeah, the
additional
dimensions are
information.
not provided, but you can figure it out. You need to be behind the front corner of the garage.
Whatever's more restrictive, we would either do the 25-foot or the corner of the garage.
So,
whichever.
Then I could weigh in and tell the building department it works.
so having said that, then where is the violation of from the sidewalk?
That's how-
You've got,
The fence that
which
is,
fence?
The existing fence on the survey shows to be 2.3 feet. And
For
I'm
clarification.
assuming based on this yellow highlighting, because they don't have a dimension on the application, based on this yellow highlighting, that they're replacing the fence in the same location, that would be a violation, that would be a non-conformity. It should be 3 feet behind the sidewalk.
So for clarification, the fence on the Monroe side,
Yes.
which there's a photograph of that side, plus there's an aerial here. So that fence is now 3 feet. They want to make that fence 4 feet and put it 3 feet from the sidewalk? Is that
They're
what you're
not
saying?
proposed it, they want to replace it in the same location.
So it's
non-conforming.
2.5 feet
If they moved
approximately.
it, if they proposed to erect it 3 feet from the sidewalk, the
There'd
only
be
one
variance
less
they would need
variance.
is for the height.
Yeah, because they could put a 4-foot fence up there if it moved it 4,
No,
no,
no.
There's two standards.
that's what I'm asking
There's
for
two standards.
clarification. Yeah,
There's
3 feet
in
from the
height,
sidewalk,
3
okay.
feet in height anywhere in the front yard, and then 3 feet away from the sidewalk. So my staff report shows that you're asking for two different items. They want to increase the maximum height by 1 feet from 3 to 4, and then they want to be closer to the sidewalk by approximately a foot.
Oh, okay. So
The
if they,
sidewalk, that doesn't, we assumed that was 3 feet. I measured it, I thought it was 3 feet.
Your survey shows that
It
it's.
does kind of look like
Yeah, that
it's
survey-
3 feet on here.
Well,
That's
I have to go with the information.
Yeah,
that
I
they-
understand.
well,
And-
let's put it this way. If you go 3 feet, when you replace it, you're going to meet the code. You won't have to come for that variance. Is that
We just
acceptable?
assumed it was 3
Yeah.
feet.
All right, so why don't we,
We're
so,
completely okay.
okay,
with
so
it.
we'll withdraw that
here's the
variance then.
measurements for where it is right
That's
now.
fine.
We're gonna withdraw it then.
Okay, so right now it's
So it's now
2.5, 3
just
feet.
the question of.
The height. Now, the next question is, I see that first of all, Gary, don't the 3-foot have to be be like picket?
That is a very confusing part of the standard, because I haven't figured out how to figure out 80% of the vertical, whatever.
Because this fence, the proposed fence has kind of an opening on the
It
top.
does
Yeah,
have an
yeah.
opening and.
But is it enough?
Clear visibility to 80% of the vertical area.
See?
Yeah.
Mark and I have been
80%.
pulling our hair up
think
on
that's
that.
80%.
That's one that
No, I
we want to-
don't, but if this is
I asked
3
the
feet
contractor that, he's
high.
like, is that 80% to the sky? Like, he didn't know. what
Right,
that meant.
right, and that's so, does
We
he,
had, we're trying not to apply that.
do they need a variance for that if we grant this?
I don't know what the variance would be for, I don't know how to measure it.
So,
I don't either.
They are showing their application, it's letter.
Shows a fence with the,
2C in that section.
it actually looks like almost 50% of the, is that true or no?
I believe that one is, it's maybe a foot of it is gonna be that little, like, I guess you could say picket.
it looks like it's almost half. So do you have the
Look on the-
measurements
on-
for,
Yeah,
this is solid from here to here. What's
Yeah.
that measurement?
We do not know.
Okay, because it looks like it's almost half the height of the
On
fence.
the rendering, it looks like it, but that
There's
doesn't.
there's two different photos or renderings. That, one of my questions would be, which one are you building and what are the dimensions? The other question I would suggest the ZBA ask is, on the marked up
This is
survey,
just an
is
example.
that really
This says
dimensions?
requested.
But the concern, and this would fall under the environmental section, I think, is sightlines.
Oh, yeah, without
Visibility from the driveway.
Oh, without a
It looks-
doubt, that was just about to get into that with it.
It looks
Yep.
like there's a corner cut.
Yep, yep.
But I can't tell, and there's no dimensions provided for that.
Now, where does it show, where do you see the corner cut? I don't see the corner cut.
On the marked up survey,
Yeah,
there's some yellow highlighting.
yeah, but it doesn't,
Yellow highlighting is the line of the fence, I think.
It's the existing fence.
so do you understand what we're talking about? So where your concrete driveway meets the road, the fence at that point is 3 foot or 2, well, now it's gonna be 3 foot off the sidewalk, which will meet code. But you still have, as you're backing out, you still have to have sight of vehicles coming or children on the sidewalk, people walking. That's our concern.
So that's, ideally, we would love to put a 6 foot all the way around there, so that's why we went with the 4 foot, because we understood that.
Well, historically, it really, that's why it's 3
visibility.
foot, because of visibility.
Oh, okay.
That's
So-
also why we wanted like the clear on the top.
Right,
So it was
understood.
kind of like the best of both worlds, it would help with that visibility.
Would you be objectionable to throwing put an angle on that? Or that's one of the remedies we've had before, where you just cut that angle.
And that's what shows on Gary's survey, but.
It does not ours,
Not
yeah,
ours.
mine
It's never
doesn't.
been.
Currently, it comes to.
Yeah, we understand what it does currently.
But currently, if it's 3 feet, that's okay.
Yeah.
Which is fine for that, but, yeah, but if it's 4 foot,
How far, I guess, how far of an angle? was
well,
it
it's
cutting
a
off
site,
the
it's a
yard?
site thing.
Okay.
So
We used to have them-
We're not opposed to it, I mean, it is our only yard that our son's able to play in, so
It's
No,
not gonna cut, yeah, it's not gonna cut out that
Yeah,
much.
then,
Is there a required measurement from the sidewalk that you have to start there?
No, it's mostly for sight, and we just wanna make sure that as they're backing out, that somebody
Yeah.
isn't
we
coming.
wouldn't be opposed.
You'd be able to see it.
If you say 10 feet from you say 10 feet from the sidewalk, then it gives the driver hopefully sufficient room to see
Great.
the sidewalk behind the fence.
So
Or-
what we can do
or
is,
make that section 3 feet.
if we grant this, we could put a condition on that be, corner be cut, and we leave it up to the building department to determine what they would.
And would we get like a letter?
Yes,
from
yeah,
the
you would,
engineer
yes,
to the
everything would be,
contractor?
yes,
Okay.
everything would be written down,
okay.
and if we go that way, I just. All right, so let me, let's start with Mr. Lemay, if you have any questions for the applicants?
Come back to me, I'm still digesting
We
here.
now only have one issue, it's just the height now.
It's the height,
Yep.
but one of my questions, and Gary didn't quite answer it here, and I understand why, is the application here does show two different types of fences, one being a solid fence all the way up to the top, and the other one with spikes or whatever going, roughly 50% of it. I'm assuming from the conversation that it's gonna be the one with the spikes.
Yeah, and when we were originally emailing back and forth with the concerns, I was like, this is what we would ideally like, but if that's a concern, this is the alternate that we would.
Yeah.
The
kinda-
fully solid fence would be what we would desire, because of what we stated with the dog and everything.
Yeah, that would need that wouldn't meet the code. Even if it was 3 foot, it wouldn't meet the code.
Yeah.
It wouldn't meet the code even
We
if it was.
also, we're flexible, so
That
if
Oh,
we
that's
needed
it.
to go with the other one, but get it to 4 feet.
Yeah,
that'd be
it was
something.
emailed.
There is a
So I don't have that.
photo cut sheet from the manufacturer that shows, looks like it's right after the neighbor letter, next page. It shows a picket style fence on top of the solid fence.
Yes.
And the note is requested fence.
Right.
So I assume that's the
Yeah.
one
The-
that's being requested.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
What we don't know are the two dimensions, the height, the overall height of the fence, and the overall, and the height of each of the two sections.
Well, the overall height is 4 foot, is that correct? That's what you're.
Yep.
Overall, yeah.
And So I see this, at least my interpretation is that we're also not meeting the 80%. At least, and I'm just going by picture here, we're only seeing 50%, roughly, from what the picture shows. And that's an aesthetic and sightline concern, which I know, has already been partially addressed here with the driveway and stuff like that. Yeah, vertical distance, yeah.
We have not been applying that because it's so vague. This is the first fence application in the 3 years I've been helping the village that actually has two different styles together. You can almost make that 80%, do a calculation for it. But most fences are uniform top to bottom. And even a picket fence isn't. And then does it have to be 80% of a given foot?
Well, again,
It's not clear on how-
as a member on this board, my interpretation is to be able to be transparent. Can I see through it?
Right.
And that's how I interpret what the village originally wrote the code to be at 80%. So, and until somebody tells me I'm wrong, that's my interpretation.
Right, correct.
I have no idea how that, hey, I didn't draft this, it's been, what is that supposed to, how is a fence ever going to be 80% visible? It wouldn't be a fence.
Well,
Well,
picket
we-
with picket fence, chain link fence,
We've had 'em,
you know.
we've had-
Even a picket fence would never be 80% open space.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand, I'm with Gary, I do not understand.
My
how that's
suggestion, John,
supposed
is
to
that,
be.
and I agree with,
Unless it's
with
chain link, which is
Well,
not
chain
allowed.
link you can't use
Well,
in the
there's,
front.
there's
So-
vinyl fences that have a gap between and then a spoke and a
Yes,
gap.
but
Oh, I know,
that's
but
not
it's still not gonna be
80%.
80%.
So, but you can
Like,
use
it's
that,
understandable.
you can use that as this style as your justification to approve it. Well, I'm not asking you to grant the variance. I don't think we should start looking at that for variance. I think we should be looking at clarifying the code.
Well, unfortunately, it's
But
in the,
what's missing,
Or- and this-
unfortunately, it's there.
It's there,
And-
right.
And I agree with Sean, it's there. We have had fences where
Yeah,
we had one on, I'm trying to think, it's Los Robles, where it was the church there. He wanted a fence for his kids out in the back, another thing, side yard, corner yard.
yeah.
But anyway, what it is just wire. It's wire run between the posts and up and down, back and forth, and it's 80% visible. I mean, I don't know why they put it in there or what they meant by it, but it's there, you know?
It's one of the suggestions I put on the whiteboard next door to.
Oh,
look
without
at.
a doubt, without a doubt.
If we had a dimension here, on this
Well, it's
requested
never gonna
fence.
be 80.
No, correct.
No, it's
I'm
not
saying,
gonna be.
I'm suggesting we don't apply that, because if we grant that variance, we gotta start looking at that for all of them. And there's-
Well, but that's what the
Most
code
won't
says.
meet.
That's what the code says. They're gonna have to, the code's gonna either have to be changed or they have to get a
Oh,
variance, or get a variance
There's
from
5
it.
houses within
Get a-
100 yards of our house that don't meet that.
Get a variance from it, you know?
But we don't
But we
know.
have to evaluate your house. We
It's
can't,
not
they
your-
could have
right.
been prior code, they could have been prior,
With the
they may
exception
not
of
have
the
pulled
one
a
you just
permit.
mentioned, I would venture to guess that 99% of the fences in the village do not meet that requirement.
Well, the
When
three-
is a fence
the
ever
three-
going to-
anywhere-
So I'm not disagreeing with you, I just reading this, I just don't. it makes
I don't
no
know why it
sense.
was there. I mean, I don't
It
know
makes no-
what it means, but I know that we have, this board has granted variances and they have met the 80%
Either way,
for 3 foot.
what's missing are those two dimensions.
Agreed.
How tall is the
Agreed.
picket section, how tall is the overall fence, or the lower part of the fence?
Maybe it's saying, sorry, I'm still thinking aloud here. Permitting clear visibility, not that 80% of it is
The
transparent.
criteria, yeah.
Right.
But that clear visibility is
Oh, the visibility is at
there
least
with
80%?
respect to 80% of the fence. as
That's
opposed-
my interpretation.
I
So,
still have
if
trouble
those slats
figuring
went
out how
down
to
further,
calculate that.
we would meet that criteria. I think it's a transparency. I don't think it's 80% of free space. Although I wasn't on the board when this law,
No,
this
nobody
regulation
does.
went in,
This is
so
something that's been in there for.
but that would be my interpretation, which obviously is more forgiving, especially in a scenario like
I
this.
think if you apply it and adjust the application and make that a second variance. That's gonna change the way that I'm working with the building department and looking at fences. Because I had not been applying it when I'm making recommendations to the building department because I can't figure out how to apply it.
Well, I kind of agree with Sean. I think if the slats went down further and it became 80% is visible, not 80% of the area, 80% is visible, that you can see through that fence. Well, that you can see through it. You can see through it. There's visibility there.
If the slats were 80%
Or
of
if
the whole
the
area of
only
the fence,
20% of the fence, total fence
Would be
area.
opaque.
solid.
Completely
So if-
Solid, exactly,
Right.
exactly.
If the whole
Exactly.
section was picketed, would you say that that?
Oh, without it, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Mhm.
yes,
Because
definitely.
that's probably arguably 100% of the fence is clearly visible.
Yes, yes.
Not that there's no,
Correct.
not that there's nothing, but
Right.
because there are openings, you can.
Right, you
You
can
have
see through it.
visibility.
You can see
You can
through
see
it.
through it.
Yes,
You
yes.
see what's on the other side.
So if the whole fence section was picketed, then the only thing
Or-
you're talking about is.
Or 80% of it, and the other 20% is solid. I mean,
At the bottom?
At the
yeah, and
bottom.
I don't know if they make the fence like that, but.
Not in the brochure
Look,
that I-
it'd look more weird if
I
that
don't-
solid was at the top.
I don't
Yeah,
disagree.
I
I'm not
I
arguing
think the
that.
biggest thing is the safety concern.
Yeah, without a
So,
doubt. That's
you
why
know,
you're trying to
Kid on
see
a big
through it.
wheel goes by, you're not
Yep,
gonna
you
see
wanna
them
be able to see
until
through
they're
it so
right
that
at
you can
that
see that
fence,
they're coming.
Yeah, I mean, the picket
You can
fences, if a kid reaches into our yard and our dog bites him because the kid.
But what's the size of the pickets though, too? I mean, that looks, these look fairly small. That looks fairly small as far as,
You can make make it 100% picket on the section closest to the driveway.
And with respect to your dog and all that, I understand, I have compassion for you on that, but you could also keep it 6 feet and just go straight across and keep a 3-foot fence in front. You could have a gate that opens to the two, so that way you'd solve your dog problem.
You mean build another
Yeah, you'd
another
have,
fence back here? You'd put
yeah,
in
right,
another-
right here, you'd put the 6-foot fence from the garage
There, and
over
then
to the
just
other
make that
6-foot
little
fence, and
area
then
in
just
front.
leave the front yard fenced in at 3 feet. Not that that's, I understand why you're not asking to do that,
Yeah,
and,
and I don't think that's as visually, like, aesthetically pleasing, like the rest of the neighborhood too for that, so.
so what is the distance between those pickets right now on that?
We did not get that. Preferably, I'd like to go as small as they possibly make, but,
Well, and
I would probably
it's
assume
the
it's
only
an
way I
inch.
think this could be interpreted, I don't think it matters, as long as there's an opening.
Right?
That section of fence,
Oh, no, I agree, but I'm just trying to solve their problem of the people
It might
reaching
be
in.
an inch, I'm not sure, I'd have to talk to.
I mean, you know yourself, the smaller you make it, obviously the less chance of
Yeah.
somebody reaching in.
Yeah.
So, either 100% or 80%, my mind, you don't need a variance.
and did they not make that fence in a 3-foot style?
We did not look.
3% high.
No, I
They
understand.
wanted it a
We
little,
wanted it 4 feet,
they
so,
wanted it a little bit higher. That's understood.
yeah.
So when we're talking about the height of the fence, this section that's right along Columbia, that's gotta be, you're asking for that to be 4 foot
Along Monroe.
along
Monroe.
Monroe?
Yeah.
The
That'd be
rest of the fence, you're asking to be
So
6 feet?
No,
it would be 4 feet from the edge of the
4
garage,
foot all the way
down
around.
the driveway,
Okay,
down Monroe,
Monroe.
and then it would also be 4 foot until.
halfway
whether it's
back?
25
Until it
foot
got to
or-
6 foot,
Okay,
where
okay.
legally could be 6 foot.
Okay, I get
And
it.
that, my understanding, that 6-foot one could be closed, that doesn't need to be.
Yes, that's correct.
Correct.
That's correct, that's correct.
Even
and
around
I
the
don't-
back?
It's considered side yard.
80% only, I think.
For the 3 foot.
Well, not even for the front, in the front yard.
They're both front yards, though, that's the problem. The
Are we
Worley's
saying that the?
Worley's front
Well,
yard.
No, we're looking
section
at
of
the
fence
side
that
yard, yeah.
abuts the neighbor is the.
This is the only part on Worley. This is the
This
part
part.
on Columbia.
Or
So
Monroe.
that's why they're saying, this is the one they want to be 4 foot.
Here, there.
We're not
This one
even
here?
talking about the corner.
Oh, okay, we're not
Yeah,
even
there
up
is.
there.
This is the street.
That's already existing.
No,
got
right
you.
here.
This is on Monroe. This is in front.
Yeah, but I don't think they're
I know,
replacing
but
that.
he's talking about the
So it's-
fence on Woodland.
Oh, I got you.
So it's, anywhere the yellow is that correct, Gary?
Correct.
Yeah, there's two different surveys in your packet.
Yeah.
One's yellow and blue, and one's yellow.
Actually,
One is yellow and blue, shows a
think there
natural
is.
driveway.
We didn't get it.
We don't have the
We
whole
didn't get a
packet.
second, we didn't get a second survey.
We don't even have a picture of the other fence.
I think one was the original application I put in, and then what I had made copies of was only the variance request. I apologize, I didn't know we were supposed to put in both of them.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, he has it. We've got, I think, enough information that we needed. Ms. Fulwiler, do you have any other questions? Mr. Lemay, you were complete, right?
I'm good, thank you.
No, I was just trying to clarify what
Yep.
they want. We're asking for a
They've agreed to go 3 foot off the sidewalk.
3 foot off the sidewalk and to put a corner
Yes. And put a
on the
corner
off the driveway.
Right,
And we're looking at this fence
yes,
that is 4 foot high,
right.
so we're
Or,
approving.
or actually, they have to come up with an 80% fence.
So
Whether they go 100% picket, or they go 80% and have,
okay, so the whole
20%
thing is
non-
conditioned upon another fence. Yeah,
So
okay.
if we go 100% picket, do we have to cut off a corner of the fence right there?
Good
Or
point.
sight line, or that would
well,
be?
you still have you're still looking through 2 fences. I mean, there's I'm trying to think, of one of our colleagues that used to be here was an engineer, and he had the specifics right down to because he even knew the height when you backed out, what you could see over, but 4 foot, you can't see over. 3 foot, you can see over. So that's a problem, so, yes.
Okay, so that's I understand now what we're trying to do here.
Yes, okay.
But it's conditioned on a different fence.
Ms. Petrie, do you have any questions?
So we are gonna stick with that 80%.
Well, we have to, I mean, it's in the code, there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, how the staff interprets it was one way, the
Well,
board's interpreting it
Unless
as,
you wanted to grant a variance.
well, that isn't in the application, though.
And they can amend the application and.
Can they amend
decide
it without
today.
going through a public hearing?
Public hearing notice, right? But I think
Can
it
they
says
through a-
Fence section, not the subsection.
Right, yeah, I don't,
So
you
if they
know,
ask
I mean,
for it.
has
we can
anybody
address it.
showed up?
So would you like to do that? Would you like to go with the proposed fence that's shown and try to get a variance, or amend your application to get a variance for the 80%?
Yeah, I think we'd prefer that, especially if we're gonna cut off that
Okay.
corner for sightline anyways, I think we would
Okay,
like to apply
Well, the
for
only
it.
thing I would say is I would make 2 separate motions on those in case
okay,
there's not unanimity about
okay,
Right.
grant both
Okay.
that.
all right,
Or.
okay.
Okay.
And require the style noted as requested fence. There's
Right.
2 styles.
Right.
And we still need a number.
Right.
We still need a number.
We still need some specifications on that, and like I said, the cutoff to the angle at the corner would be up to the building inspectors to go by a generally accepted standard or
So how
something.
can we agree with this fence if he's telling us we gotta have numbers now?
No, that,
He's saying 4 feet. I don't know.
it's 4 feet high,
So if you're
regardless of
picking
what
this
it,
I know
fence,
that, but he's
what's
saying-
this dimension?
well, he's just saying,
If
what's
we're-
the dimension? There's no-
It does matter
It's 4
because
feet high.
you don't have, there's another
Well,
version
again,
of the same thing.
we don't have that, Gary, that's the problem. We don't have this other drawing.
So we're gonna go with that proposed, and I don't know, is it page numbered, or is there any kind of a
As
indication?
requested.
Yes, it
So
says,
the
Noted.
fence
Noted as quote unquote
Yes,
as
yes,
requested.
identified
yes.
as
Okay,
requested
all right.
fence.
okay, so we're down to that,
Okay,
okay.
Okay,
Ms.
so we
Petrie,
still
anything
have
else?
two
So now we got 2
now.
variances, now we're back to
Not-
2 again, yes,
Okay.
okay?
So the variance
Anything else?
is the height?
The height and the
fence,
80%,
the kind of fence.
yes,
Okay, right.
okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we?
Would you like we just had a signature from the next door neighbor, I don't know if you want that.
Sure, we'll put it in the file, yep, there's no problem with that. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, so thank you for your presentation, and we will make a decision this evening. You're welcome to,
Clarify with the applicant, which fence are we talking about? This one, or
This is the one,
this one?
This is.
We don't
this
have
is-
that.
This was
I know.
submitted.
We got one- we only got
subject
one.
to the
But
application.
they
Yeah,
submitted that.
This
so-
one, this one.
It came with the
Yeah.
original application.
When I was emailing back and forth, I was like, well, if we needed to, this is what we would do, and then they said that it was
But this
denied
is-
if we request the variance.
This is the survey that you're talking.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you don't give me a distance, I'm gonna calculate it, put it at the front of the door.
Okay, this is 160. Okay, thank you very much. Like we said, we will have a decision this evening. You're welcome to stick around.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the line.
Okay.
In front of the garage, is that the line?
Yep. All right, so the next, we'll close that public hearing. The next hearing that we have scheduled is for 62.5 Mill Street, an area variance, minimum side yard setback, 112-12.C.2. Will the applicant please come forward? Mr. Sutton? Good evening.
Good evening.
Let me just mention what's in the file here. Seem to have a little less than anything, but there's a staff report, there's an application, and I believe that's about it that I have. Well, that's 160 Monroe. This is for Cadman. Cadman, Monroe, and 62.5 mil. This is a staff report. Okay, please proceed with your, would you like the notice read, or would you waive
If I
that?
could waive that, that would be great.
Thank you. Please proceed with your presentation.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Dave Sutton from Sutton Architecture. Here with me this evening is Tony Albert, who is owner of the property at 62.5 Mill Street and also resides at the property. We are here today seeking a side yard setback variance. Village code requires 5 feet for a side yard setback. We're proposing to be just over 3 feet for the setback. The reason for this variance is for an addition that we're proposing at the back of the house. The northeast corner of the addition is in fact infected or affected by a unique angle in the property. So if you refer to sheet A3, we have a site plan that kind of represents the uniqueness of the property, location of the addition, and proximity to the existing house. One thing to be noted is that the existing house is actually already in non-compliance to the required 5-foot setback. And that's what basically makes the addition complicated in order to maintain that 5-foot setback. This property is very unique in many ways. It is unique because of the nature of the property lines, which are represented in the site plan. Also unique in the fact that it's set back from the street, and the property to the north is actually owned either by the village of Williamsville or New York State because it's adjacent to the park, which is very, it's the village, correct?
Yeah, we look into that.
Thanks for that clarification. And it is owned by the village and has no real impact on any adjacent residential properties. And I do have actually, for a little bit of clarification, I was able to quickly take our proposed site plan, superimpose it onto a aerial map. And I do have copies of those if anybody on the board would like to see that, just for a point of reference to see the unique nature and location of this house located at 62.5 Mill Street. So the variance request today is necessary in order to do the addition that we're proposing at the property, and in order to, for this board to consider the variance. I know we are obligated to address the 5 criteria, and I'm prepared to do so.
Okay,
The
so mine,
undesirable
this
change
was
to the
mine.
character of the neighborhood or the
This is
detriment of
okay.
nearby properties.
And this
It is our
here. I
opinion
know
that it
exactly
has
what one it is.
no
Yep.
real significant change to the property. In fact, or to the adjacent properties in the neighborhood. In fact, we feel it will enhance it. This is a very unique house. It's a very small house and much smaller than many of the other houses
It is a
in
small
the
house.
surrounding neighborhood. And this proposed addition will allow my client to actually reside at this house, and it gives the necessary amenities to the house for him to continue to reside at this property. So it will not have any real negative impact on any surrounding properties based on its unique location and the nature of the fact that the existing building is actually within the required setback of the proximity, so it will not create any different change in character other than what's already there. The second item of which is whether the benefits were sought for some other method other than the variance. My client did do a lot of due diligence, even going as far as attempting to possibly talk to the village of purchasing a small piece of property which would bring it into compliance. The village was not interested in selling the property, understandably so. And the variance is required as a result, and we have no other means to get the desired effect without requesting this variance. So item number 3 is whether the request is substantial. We're talking about a 2-foot deviation from the setback. It is not substantial in the fact that it's actually almost in line with the existing building and the fact of its location and proximity to the property. One thing I must also note too, as the request for the variance will not have any impact on New York State code for fire rating and any building code or structure. It will be 100% compliant to fire code and all other aspects of New York State building code. Whether it will have an adverse effect on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood, we feel absolutely not. Once again, it's not the addition that we're here for the variance for. It's a small 2-foot sliver. It's a maximum of 2 foot and it narrows down to 0, and that really has no impact on any physical or environmental conditions or surrounding neighborhood. And then whether the alleged difficulty is self-created. It's our opinion that it is not self-created. We are subject to a very unique property, and in order to do the addition, we are required to kind of project into this required setback. And one other thing to be noted too is that it is our opinion that it's not self-created, but it's also not a reason for denial. We realize that this application, it's your obligation to consider the perceived benefit of the variance applied for compared to any detriment to any surrounding properties in the neighborhood. And we feel we've put together enough of argument or discussion to suggest that the benefits far outweigh any detriments to any of the surrounding properties. So that being said, once again, I can provide the aerial view with the superimposed, but it's just a colored version of the site plan that's presented on A3, as well as the additional documentation already submitted. So at this time, if the board had any questions, I'd be more than willing to entertain them.
Before we do that, I'm just going to ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor or in opposition to the variance. Apparently someone was going to say something, possibly.
That was a neighbor on Middle Street. I think he was just curious, and
Okay.
obviously during my presentation, he may
Okay.
have got his answers. I guess.
Sounds good. So at this point, I'm going to ask the board, Ms. Petrie, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I see that it's already, the addition's already adjusted or set
Correct.
a little bit. Is there any reason why it couldn't be set back even further to
Yeah.
accomplish the
Good
setback?
question. Yeah, for sure. We did struggle with this design, and it really did complicate the structural criteria, the meeting of the program, and by moving it in, it made a substantial deviation to what we could provide for the addition, and it really challenged us. So we felt that the request, once again, the benefit that we're asking for with the addition far outweighs any detriment that we're asking for this variance today.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, Ms. Fullwiler?
Not really, you're digging a new basement. It's not just an extension, so it's the whole basement and
Correct.
how many, whatever the stories are, I don't know what the, so, no, I don't have a question.
Mr. Lemay?
So the existing house is already over what
Yeah.
appears to be roughly 2 feet
Non-conforming,
non-conforming.
yes.
Yep.
And the existing deck is also non-conforming, which that obviously is getting torn off.
Correct.
From what I can tell from the photos, from Google Aerial, which is similar to what you've got, it looks like there's a tree line there between the park and this property, correct?
That's correct. I mean, there is an established barrier. It's actually, there is actually the remnants or a suggestion of a fence, which is much further into the village property, defining some boundaries. It's not like we're imposing on parkland or anything or village-owned property. You know, we were very careful when we did this addition, that we were respectful, because, you know, the neighboring property is not an individual, it's actually a village. It's open to the public. You know, we felt that this addition had to be done in such a way that we're respecting the park, taking advantage of the benefits of the park for my applicant, but also at the same time respecting our addition, respectful to the park patrons and the village as a whole.
Gotcha.
Mr. Chair, I have a comment, question to ask before you close the public hearing.
Sure.
So that the applicant may answer. Okay, I'm gonna give the applicant a copy of the draft staff report.
Okay,
You'll see in my staff report that I noted I couldn't calculate some of the other dimensional requirements. The one that comes to mind that I'm most concerned about would be documenting that the rear yard setback is met. The rear yard setback's 25% of the depth of the lot. The survey, or the portion of the survey that came with the application, and it was used for the site plan on the plans, isn't complete, and I couldn't do all of the calculations. So you will see that if you go as far as approving this, I made a recommendation for a condition that would say this action is limited to the side yard. And then when we get a complete survey, we could then do
The
the
rear
job of calculating what's going on.
Is it a weird back?
Yes. And having said all that, as I was working on writing my staff report, Carol has found an old survey, not from the applicants, but in our files.
Yep, the applicant actually did give me.
Oh, okay.
The blown up one.
So
I
we
gave the
get
old
copies
one.
of them.
I just have those if they want to pass it around. I got a couple of smaller ones.
Yeah. So, the point is,
And Gary, if we approve it, we're only approving the side variance, so.
That's correct.
that's
Right.
all I'm saying.
Yep.
And then
That's all you've
building
given us.
department, when they get the full set of plans,
Oh, we might be
approve the whole
back.
survey.
That might be back, right.
Hopefully,
Understood.
the rear yard's met, along with everything else. 25% of the deep lot.
This is the,
Or what's the front, maybe the
this is
second
the
question.
same
was-
dwelling, and this is the
Yeah.
one that's
Yeah,
with
yeah,
this.
62.
I made a call.
Yeah.
I happen to know, why is it
You know,
like?
for the
Wow,
record,
but this shows- what do you
in
mean? This
response to
shows
Gary's
17 feet
comments,
from-
excuse me, please.
Lot.
Say-
I'm sorry.
Ms. Fuller,
I'm sorry.
he's making a point, I just want you to hear
Yeah,
and see what
I'm
he's,
sorry.
go ahead.
for the record, in response to Gary's points, we are well aware that we're here for a side yard setback requirement, and by no means are we with the understanding that any approval of this board would suggest complete approval of this project. It would be solely for the side yard setback request this evening.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? All right, we'll conclude the,
I'm just trying to figure out, I'm just looking at them. What is this? Is there some sort of something here in the, like, what,
I believe that is the fence that I
oh,
was
that's fine. I
referring
just wanted
but it looks like,
to make sure
to,
you-
shadow.
oh,
So
okay.
in other words,
Shadow.
maybe come back for something else.
So is that on your client's property or on the village's?
It's not, it's on the village property.
Okay. Oh, you already answered that.
Mill Street.
It came out
See,
because
this shows 3.61 feet this corner from the lot.
it was, had fallen down, and we had to find out
Maybe was
whose fence it was.
I see, okay.
So
I
that
guess
shows a
it's,
different
there is a
one.
remnants of a foundation, and that might be what you're seeing. But it's definitely on the village property, and it's probably 15 feet from the property line, I would think,
I know you, Ben would know exactly.
approximately.
Yeah, you can't tell on Google Maps because the trees are so,
Yeah.
the
Yeah, there's
foliage
much
is
in
so
the way,
thick.
right.
But on the GIS, the foliage is not as thick, but there's, yeah, it looks like, okay,
Yeah.
it's not clear to what is I'm looking at.
An old mill.
No, that's sweet.
Anything else you'd like to present, Mr. Sutton?
I think that's it, unless the board has any additional questions.
I don't think so at this time. We will make the decision this evening. You're certainly welcome to stick around.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. All right. We'll close the public hearings, and I'm opening up the first case, which is 425 Cadman. What's your pleasure on that? We can make a motion to accept it, and if people want to deny it, they can deny it, or we can put conditions on it, whatever way you'd like to proceed. Do you want to discuss it before?
Well, let me just
Yeah.
say something for the record, for the board, because when I started to look at that, I was like, well, wait a minute, this thing may not need a variance at all, because if it's true that she's just replacing something that was already there, and it fell down or was destroyed for any reason, what our code says, other than deliberate demolition, it's protected, it can be rebuilt, it can be replaced
Okay.
under the non-conforming use section. However, that, one, it wasn't clear to me from the hearing as to whether or not that thing was destroyed or damaged for any reason or was deliberately taken down. But if that doesn't matter because it was not, I was just looking at Google Maps images, portions of that fence were removed like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And to still have non-conforming structure protection, it would have had to be replaced within 6 months of being damaged or destroyed. So that clearly didn't happen. So I just want to make it clear that it is not untitled to non-conforming use protection, so it would need a variance.
The portion that was removed, though, was not along Worley. It was the
Right, it
line
was that
from
one that
Willing
connected to the
up
house.
to the
But it was
house.
Well, but
damaged, it
even-
was damaged. She did mention that that was
But
damaged.
that was
Right, but
prior owner,
unfortunately, what
too.
the code says, like, if that's the case,
Right,
she would have had to have replaced it
prior
without a
owner,
variance
prior owner.
within 6 months of that happening, and that clearly didn't happen,
No.
so,
The other,
They just purchased the house.
yeah. so-
But we could use that as
It could-
justification
yeah,
for
yeah,
a
I'm not-
variance.
Yeah, so you could, I'm not telling, I'm just saying, I just
Right.
wanna make it clear, because I was.
I would
having
feel
a
more
little-
comfortable going that way,
I was
but,
having a little conversation, because I was like, well,
Yep.
geez, do they even need a variance
Right.
here? But given that it's clear that it was not replaced within 6 months,
okay.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to ask, because I'm very familiar with this property. I walk by there all the time, and I know that there were sections of the stockade fence that came down on Worley, but not the whole thing. But I don't ever remember seeing the part that went from that back corner to the house.
it shows up on Google, it's interesting, because if you go on Google Maps and you start
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
navigating around, Google Maps like pieces together
Right, right,
pictures
right.
from where were taken at different times. So that fence appears and then disappears as you sort of move down
Right.
and around the corner. But it shows up in the 2020 image, and it's gone by the 2022.
Okay, because some of her pictures show it.
Oh,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of the questions I was trying to
And
answer.
we also get into the 80% if we grant this variance, because this is
Is a
supposed to be a 3-foot, 80% clearance.
so, one thing I would, we're talking about it being replacement, I didn't know that. board or tell, I don't remember who exactly was on the board when we dealt with the corner of Evans and
Yeah,
Eagle?
yeah,
So you were on the board, okay.
yeah.
There's only one member that wasn't on the board, she's not
Right,
here tonight.
right.
But that one you worked out, it ended up being a replacement, and at that time, going through the same issue that Chip just did, we didn't call it a non-conforming use, went through that with the building commissioner and myself, because it was taken down purposely.
Yeah.
So, but there is another fence that you did grant, and could add the 80% if you felt like
Right.
it does meet one, this one does meet the 3 feet. It's, I think it's more like 10 feet from the sidewalk.
And it's certainly not any, there's no vision issue or anything.
There's no, I went out and
No
looked,
driveway,
Right,
right?
I went out and looked, I confirmed how far away it was from the sidewalk, and there's no driveways right there.
And it's on a rise.
Right.
It's a little bit of a
Yep.
rise. It's higher.
I mean, there's clear vision down the street from the corner.
The street is up here.
Yep, yep, so.
It doesn't even come near the corner.
So what's your pleasure, folks?
We,
Kind of a resolution you want to propose?
I move that we approve, grant the variance as to height. That's the only variance we're looking at. We're not
Well,
really looking at
really,
location.
For
The 80,
80% also.
well, considering it's a replacement fence.
So again, if you're gonna do that.
We have to do
That's how
two.
you justify it.
I would treat those separately.
Okay,
because
so,
You don't wanna, it shouldn't be an all or nothing.
okay, so
You can
I'll make
grant one and
a,
not grant the other.
a motion to approve a variance as to the height of the fence.
Okay,
As
And
proposed.
that's as
as
proposed.
proposed.
And so we don't have to talk about the location or anything, it's just the height for
Right.
that.
Yeah, because there's no, right, there's nothing other than height and the 80%.
Correct, correct.
And our,
Okay.
and our justification is that a couple
It's
of
a
things, it's a replacement fence, and some of the fence was blown down, regardless of if it was timely or not that they put it back up,
Mm-hmm.
it's still a factor.
Because it would be a real detriment to her if
Yes,
she had
yes.
to pay these
Okay.
people to.
All right,
But
and
then-
then, so we will take that as a motion. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Petrie. Ms. Fullwiler proposed, second by Ms. Petrie. Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrews,
Yes.
Fullwiler,
Yes,
Lemay,
I'm
Get-
sitting on this one.
you have to get off the fence.
Literally.
No pun intended, every pun intended.
Yes.
Petrie,
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 4-0. Okay,
So that's just for the height.
now we have to have a motion for the 80%.
Yes.
Are you willing to make a motion for the 80%?
I will make another motion, what's the
80%,
motion?
80% visibility?
Grant a
To
variance.
grant a
from-
variance for the
Section, he's gonna
transparency.
get the section,
I can read the,
section.
that the board does hereby grant an area variance to the minimum 80%
Transparency.
visibility,
Visibility, not
visibility standard.
Okay,
In 112,
So it's
22A,
to
2C.
okay, that one. For the reason, do we need like a
Yes,
reason?
Yeah,
justification,
yeah,
yeah,
If the
justification.
justification is the fence doesn't affect the visibility or safety along the streets,
And it is effectively the backyard.
and it is, well, yeah,
Right,
it's
I mean,
really,
it's
but
really
it's,
the-
yeah.
And it's
So
a
there's no
replacement.
Not
safety issue,
technically, but it is effectively. It's not
which was the point of that.
Right.
I like the way Rick phrased that, technically, but effectively.
as proposed.
As
As
opposed.
proposed, yes. Second on that motion?
second.
Ms. Petrie, Ms. Fullwiler proposed, second by Ms. Petrie. Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrews,
Yes.
Fullwiler,
Yes.
Lemay,
No.
Okay, the motion carries 3-0, 3-1, I'm sorry, 3-1.
Yes.
Petrie,
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you called me, I'm sorry. Okay, if it's, because a 2-2 would have been a lost.
I will revise the resolution, give that to Carol Friday, and we'll let you know when it can be signed.
Okay, thank you.
There's another correction on the resolution. For some reason, after your first whereas, 112.22A2C, the height is in C,
Yeah.
the 80% is in C, B is the 3 foot inside the interior
Okay,
sidewalk. Carry that over from the other
okay,
resolution, obviously.
all right, thank you. Okay, let's move on to 160 Monroe. What's your pleasure on that?
Do we have that draft resolution?
Yes. Yeah, you've got, you know what, I think there's copies of it.
I gave you 3.
Yeah, you gave them to,
Here, I got it.
there, there you
I'm
go.
having trouble staying organized here.
There you go.
There's a change there.
There's a change because the applicant agreed, essentially
Right.
withdrew
Right.
Yeah, number
the
2.
the request.
So number 2 is removed, but then number 2 is added as a
Yeah,
visibility.
exactly.
So what's the visibility
out.
sections?
Again,
It's-
it's 112.22 A, sorry, 112.22 A2C.
Okay, and that's the visibility. Okay, so
Okay.
let's take those separately also.
I do have a question.
Yes.
If we do that separately,
Oops.
where does
No,
any adjustment for that corner cut out?
Well,
So which,
either way, it's a condition if we put it in either way. If they don't, you know, if we don't pass the visibility, they have to meet the 80%. And if we put that other condition down based on this one, the first variance, then it's required.
Right.
so it doesn't
But I
matter
think-
which one?
Well, I think you put it in the height one because only, I agree, ultimately it really doesn't matter, but it seems to me to make sense in the height one because that's what's creating the potential issue.
Right.
Okay.
I have a question.
But whatever, I actually don't, I take that, I don't even.
It doesn't.
You can impose that condition on either.
Because that could be on the, that's gonna be on the, could be on the first variance, that's granted or denied, and then the second one would come up.
And then we would,
It's actually, if the first one's denied, it probably the second one's a moot point.
Well, yeah, the first one, right, they've withdrawn.
Yes. Withdrawn the part about the 3 foot or 2 foot from the sidewalk. That's been removed.
Oh, right, I'm sorry, I was looking at the.
Yeah, number 2,
Staff report.
distance to the sidewalk
Yeah,
is
Number, you were
removed.
looking at the draft resolution, sorry. I was looking at the staff report.
So what is your pleasure on that, folks? We need
Can I
a
ask a
motion one way or the
question
other.
first?
Sure.
What is the distance from Monroe? If they move the fence back from Monroe, how far would they have to move it back
About a foot.
to eliminate
the height.
the height requirement?
They'd have to go all the way back to the
front of the
corner.
house.
You can't, yeah, you can't,
Yeah, that would
you
have-
can't. So it's in the front
We'd
yard.
take that.
Yeah, it's in the front yard regardless. Yep. So we're looking for a resolution. If, like I said, if you want to make the first motion about the height and approve or deny, that's strictly up to you, or put conditions on it, it's up to whoever makes the motion. If we want to put those conditions we spoke about, we need to do that.
The draft resolution has a motion at the bottom, does hereby grant an area variance to the maximum fence height to be located 2 feet inside. I would suggest you
Yeah, that has to be removed, yep. Maximum 4-foot fence to be located, not just 4-foot fence.
4-foot fence. But then you could add, subject to the following.
Exactly, conditions, right. Right. But that's up to, who's making a motion here? Somebody make a motion.
Well, we're still discussing.
Well,
Not much
I-
to there's not much to
Yeah.
discuss. Yeah, you
make
can
a
discuss
motion, then we
afterward.
can discuss it.
Like I said, you can motion to approve it, put conditions, do whatever you want to do, and then
Okay,
we'll
I'll make
discuss
a
it.
motion, and then we
Alright.
can talk about it.
All right?
So, I make a motion that we grant an area variance,
This is a height one.
the height one,
4
yeah,
foot.
to the maximum fence height, that's what I'm
Yep.
looking at here.
Yep.
Provided,
Well, and then we'll have,
With the
with condition,
with
yes,
the condition
yes.
that they cut that corner. I don't know how you would describe that, near the driveway.
I think what you can say is that the fence be connected between the section along the driveway and the section fronting Monroe
At an angle?
at an angle.
Subject to the
So,
building
As
department.
determined
By
by
the
the
building
building
department.
department.
Okay,
Yes, yes.
okay, that works for that. And conditioned upon the fence providing, what's the visibility?
Well, we're gonna do that
So you
separately.
have to do that separate,
Yep, so
okay.
let's just do that one first. They don't have,
Well, but if you're gonna grant the height of the fence,
well, the visibility's gonna be second, so the height doesn't matter. The height's the height. We're giving them a foot. If you grant this, they're giving them a foot. Rather than 3 foot, it's gonna be 4 foot. Not regardless of
and
what
we
the
can't
fence.
make it conditioned on the visibility?
Well, that's gonna be the next motion.
For
That's the
visibility.
next motion.
Two standards, each standard gets its own motion.
That's the next motion. So we're gonna vote 2 different ways. We can grant them the fence,
So if we pass the 4-foot one,
yes. And we don't pass the visibility, they have to meet the visibility.
In other
okay,
words,
all right, okay, so I'll do it that way, so,
All right, so we got a motion by Ms. Fullwiler to grant the 4-foot height, with the condition that what do we call that? The cutout?
The connection between the portion of the fence abutting the driveway and the portion of the fence fronting on Monroe be connected at an angle.
as
an appropriate
required
angle
by,
As determined by the building.
By the building
yeah,
department, right?
okay.
Okay. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Petrie. On the question, everybody understand what we're voting on?
Yes.
All right, clerk, please call the roll.
I thought we were gonna discuss.
I just did, I just said discussion.
On the
I just said,
question.
on the question.
Oh, I'm sorry, because I wasn't paying attention.
Go ahead.
I'm
We can't talk
cons-
about the visibility.
I understand. I'm concerned with this on a number of reasons. One, the 3 foot. The village code was set by the village, by the elected people on the village to be 3 feet. And I believe part of that was visibility, but I also believe part of that was an aesthetics thing with trying to keep fences from being very tall in our front yards. Do I believe that there are other feasible ways to do this? Yes. I also believe this is self-imposed in the sense that, I could argue this for every family that has a child, including myself. I could argue this for every family that has a dog, including myself. I could argue this for every family that has Mother Nature coming into their front yard, deer included, again, myself. I don't have a non-conforming fence in my front yard. So this is one of those issues where, in my opinion, this really needs to go back to the board, and the board should be asked to change the code. And that's a decision and a discussion for the board to make. Do we want to allow fences to be 4 feet in the front yard versus 3 feet?
Okay. So, any other question? Anybody else on the question? So what you're saying, Mr. Lemay, is what the applicant said, basically it was for their dog jumping over it? Is that what you're,
For the safety of their dog, for the safety of their children, and for the Mother Nature effect, deer was
Well, it's
cited.
not gonna
Well,
keep the
deer's gonna jump over that in a heartbeat. I watch that every day.
okay. All right, so I'll ask the clerk to please, if there's nobody else has anything on the question? Clerk, please call the roll and call mine last, please.
Fullwiler,
pass,
Is that
please. What's that?
a pass?
Is that a,
Yes.
is
You're
that
not passing.
abstain and or,
Come back to me.
No, see, no, you just-
Lemay,
No.
Petrie,
I'm gonna have to go no.
Andrews,
no? Go back to Ms.
Come
Fullwater,
back to me.
back to Ms. Fullwater.
Fullwiler,
No.
yes. Petrie,
The motion passed, the motion fails, been denied. But as far as visibility, we have to, if they continue, if they would go ahead with the 3 foot, they would have to meet the visibility, so I would think that's a moot point at this point, right?
No, if they
No.
choose to do a 3-foot fence,
I can ask the applicant, if you, the 4 foot was denied, so the 3 foot fence could go up, but it would have to be 80% visible. So would you like us to continue with that as a variance, the type of fence you're proposing, to be 3 foot rather than 4 foot? Or do you want to, I mean, if you don't, you have to meet the visibility. You would only be allowed to put a 3 foot fence up, but you'd have to meet the 80% visibility. And there wouldn't, the cutout part wouldn't come into play because it's not, you don't need a variance. And you'd have the 80%.
In other words, you'd probably be putting up a 3-foot picket fence is really what it would amount to.
Is that the only, I mean,
Well-
in a hard position.
Do they have the opportunity to come back for that?
Well, we grant you a variance on the visibility, right?
Well,
Tonight, possibly if we.
But they already have a 3 foot picket fence in their yard. Presumably,
It's not.
They could
if they
replace
can't build a
it.
4 feet fence, they probably, yeah, but why would you?
Probably
replace
have to replace it, right? Is it?
Why?
There are some spots that are 2.5 feet, like, the whole thing, it's like,
It's like this.
goes like
Yeah.
this, it's like a.
Oh, okay, it's sort of.
And so
yeah.
there's some very low spots, which is why we knew regardless that we needed to do it. And, you know, I know that this isn't the case because you can only do it in us. I don't think we ever thought it was gonna be a huge issue because there are so many corner houses as like we're walking the area that do have closed or 4 foot. And so I feel like I didn't do a good job of maybe articulating on the initial application and then this one. Maybe some of that too, but I guess so it sounds like we would never get approved for a 4 foot, or we would if it was picket. I guess like that's where I'm so confused.
We hadn't gotten into the visibility yet, that was the next.
It's just the
the
height.
fence that was proposed at that height that you said and the style you said
Yeah.
was denied.
Okay,
You can put up a 3-foot fence. If you put up a 3-foot picket fence, you would not need to request a variance for the 80% visibility.
So,
but
The-
it-
the only thing we just denied, and correct me if I'm wrong, was the height.
Well,
So-
height as was agreed with the various drawings, what
That's
was
not the way it
proposed
was pro-
solid at one point.
That's not what was proposed, though. That's not what was motioned.
I know that.
No, no.
The application shows a requested fence that had picket on top and solid on the bottom, and it was confirmed during the public hearing that it was gonna be 4 feet high total. That
So
was what was denied.
I would like to make, I would like to make another motion that and the reason I'm stating this is that we have to realize that just because we don't like the fence, or we think that it would set a precedent, which it doesn't, again, we're back to that. Also, the criteria, was the 5 criteria met? I know you did state a couple of things, Mr. Lemay. If you want to restate those, I would appreciate that.
I was specifically looking at 3 variances. Does it produce any undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood determined by, based on,
You
Not
felt
reading
that,
it here.
you felt that that was an undesirable change?
going to 4 feet? Yes. I believe the town code
Well, yeah,
specifically
that's-
came in at 3 feet for a
That's not,
reason.
that's not what we're discussing.
Yep.
We understand that they're going for a variance because of that code. So that doesn't affect, you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
And so, okay, so there was a couple
But-
more that you mentioned.
Can they achieve similar results? Yeah, they can go back to being a 3-foot fence. Is it self-created? Yes, and I was explaining the reasons why.
Well, self-created, but again, there again.
Yep, I'm agreeing,
by
I'm
itself,
agreeing.
right?
But that's 3 criteria in my book out of the 5.
Right.
If I may offer something for you to discuss. Want to grant the minimum variance necessary. If we look at the visibility question, it's part of this standard under
Right.
paragraph C. Would a 4-foot picket fence, as opposed to the hybrid fence that is identified here as requested, would a 4-foot picket fence pass that criteria? Maybe that's something to consider.
There again, it's a variance. It's a variance
Yeah.
from the code. We understand the code says 3 foot, and this is a variance that they're requesting based on this 5 criteria.
What I'm suggesting is if it was a variance for a different fence, a different style fence that does not have the solid panels on the, what
That's
looks
what
like
I was
the
trying
lower,
to get to.
the lower,
Okay.
2/3 or 3/4. If it was all picket. Maybe, yeah, I guess,
So,
it sounds like not everyone has the same drawings. I have this drawing, well, you do have it, it's
That
in
one,
your
yeah.
application. So, I'm
Right, but we
asking-
don't
Yeah, we don't have that.
They don't have us the other one.
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
picked
you-
this
you've
one,
got that
but
one.
it's this style all the way up.
Oh, you've
Versus
got it.
the
You got that one.
Yeah.
Which-
So,
I thought he was showing
Chip,
me.
This
we
is the
would-
other one.
would we be able to
This
make
is-
another
this is the
motion
one we
based on
don't
some?
have. We have this one.
I'm confused, because frankly, that was a height variance. It
Right.
really shouldn't have had anything to do with
The style of the fence, I
Yeah,
would
that's
think.
But
why
we
I
could-
recommended that you break those things up into 2 variances.
But-
Height is height, visibility is visibility.
But could we tie them
If they go to a
together?
different style fence, it's not as obtrusive.
Could we tie them together?
You could do
To the
whatever
point- to the
you
point
want.
where-
What I was trying to avoid was the possibility of somebody saying, well, I don't have a problem with 4 feet, but I want more visibility, or I.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Or I don't-
Would we be able to go with the variance? We said, yes, you need to meet the visibility.
That's,
Um,
that's
and-
where I was trying to get to. I would
If
say,
somebody
I would,
wants to make
I
a
would
motion
grant the 4
combining
foot
those two-
if,
Okay. So would you like to revise your motion?
okay, I don't have a picture of the fence.
Yes,
It's,
Well, it would be, it would have to be, it would have to meet the 80%.
well, he has a picture.
No, that's, this, we have the
Yeah,
same
the
one.
one that says,
No, but that's not the
It's the
picket
same.
fence.
Question.
That-
Saying,
Oh,
Gary has a picture of a picket fence.
No, there isn't.
No.
That
No,
one, right there.
that is, well,
It's a picket fence. Right?
okay.
Isn't that what that is?
It was the first
Yes,
change
yes.
was if.
I don't have
This
that.
is what we would ideally like, but we can't, we
No,
would
we
be
don't have
willing
that.
to
We
do,
don't
it
have
was
that.
trying to show. we
And
were
I would
amenable to
condition.
yeah, I would
the
agree.
variance.
Condition it that it's open, not closed.
I would condition, I would make a motion to approve the variance in height conditioned
But
upon,
that's, no, sorry, that doesn't
See-
make sense. It's not, you can't condition it on
Well,
another
that-
thing they need a variance for. Just combine the two, so, okay? So
Okay,
this is a
okay, I'm gonna make a motion
approve
to,
a 4-foot picket style fence,
yes,
and therefore granting a variance from the height restriction, and that's it.
That's
because
it,
it's
that's it,
not
because that would meet the code.
But
That would meet the visibility.
but based on what was supplied to
Correct.
village staff, it would be a 4-foot open.
It would-
Open
it wouldn't-
picket
It would
fence.
meet the,
What was submitted says closed, which would make it like the wall in front of you.
so we don't,
That's why I.
we don't even need to address that. All we need to say is it's gotta meet the 80% visibility.
Picket fence by definition
So-
is open.
If you wanna propose that.
Okay.
make the
Well, let's
motion.
ask it, clarify. What are the,
What is it?
right, are these individual, whatever, and this is open space between?
Yes, yes.
Why does it say closed?
I don't know, I literally cropped it from the, booklet
I have no idea what
that they
closed
gave us.
picket fence is supposed to
Well, the bottom line is, we're just gonna
It's
say that
open,
it has
yes.
to meet the
Right.
80%. So you
Okay.
can have your pickets an inch apart, or 2 inches apart, whatever,
Yep.
as long as it meets that visibility, the
Okay, yeah.
80%.
Okay.
All right?
Here's
okay, so,
something called a 4-foot tall closed picket fence. It's, like, I don't know what it means, whatever,
I
what they
don't,
mean by
well, we
closed.
didn't have that level of detail, I have
Yeah.
a fuzzy
4-foot, what
image
is
here.
I've got a
I
picket
think because
fence
it
that's
was blown
got like,
up, I apologize.
I got a picket fence that
No,
has like
it's not you.
3/16 of an
I
inch in
understand
between
the
it, so
term
it's open,
Yeah,
but it's
it-
not really open.
It's straight from the booklet, there was like 8 different styles of like their picket, and so I snip it to put in the email.
So do you understand what we're proposing now?
Yes.
We're proposing, the new motion is to grant the 4-foot, but it would have to be open. It would have to,
Yeah.
and it would still have that
and it
condition
would
of the
still have the
cutoff.
cut,
The cut.
that,
Yeah.
Just because the
Angle
two
cut.
are together and you're not really seeing through it.
that's the motion.
All right, Gary, you got that?
I can make it, I can,
The term closed.
Yeah, we're not even gonna worry about that. We're gonna go with the fact that it has to meet the code, 80% visibility.
you shouldn't have to say, but I understand.
Right,
Why you want to.
Why-
Right.
I
Does,
understand.
now, does that mean that they would have to show their proposed fences to you, and you
Yes.
would
The
say
building
yes?
department,
It
yes.
does,
It's
okay.
gonna be a
They
revised.
still need to pull a permit, and the permit's gonna have to be consistent with whatever you guys are.
Okay.
So it still has a,
Fence permit application to the
Okay.
building department through Carol, and as Chip said, it's gotta meet.
still having that wording about the connecting, at the driveway and the,
I don't understand why we use
right, Gary?
closed.
You got that?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna call it, hereby grant an area variance to the maximum height for a 4-foot open picket fence as presented. I'll make a note, like copy this and
Yeah.
mark it up correctly, as presented. Subject to condition that the connection between the driveway and Monroe right-of-way is at an angle to be determined by the building department to ensure, I added this, I'm suggesting you add this, to ensure, clear vision.
Yes, so there's no visibility now.
Sidewalk.
There's no visibility variance, all right. Second on that motion?
The only thing sorry, I want to confuse things if that's right, but.
What?
The term, as I'm just Googling here, the term closed picket fence is essentially, seems to be used by the fence industry to mean what we're describing as an open picket.
Well, then, couldn't you say that meets the
Just has to
standard?
meet the requirement.
Should we open?
I guess.
Just meets the requirement, and that's gonna be up to the building department to determine if it
I
meets the
really
requirement or
don't know
not.
why they use the
The
term
reason why I.
closed.
We're not using open, closed, we're not using
I would
anything,
read it the same way.
at least not in the
I
motion
just
anyway.
didn't I don't understand what,
Do I have a second on that motion?
let's see what happens if I say open picket fence.
You know what changes between open and closed? The top.
Oh,
Yeah, I used Google Images and Googled both. The closed, it's flat across the top on all of them. The open, the top is pickets.
Oh.
Yep,
So wait a minute.
see, closed.
Okay, so
There you go.
closed has a top rail,
Yep.
basically.
Yeah, but it also has to provide the visibility.
Yeah, so we
Right,
should,
right.
we should stick to the.
Still
open.
meets the visibility, yes.
Yeah,
If that's what, if that's what the applicant is proposing, call it open, and that way it's open all the way to the top.
yeah.
It's just a matter of a rail across the top, correct?
It's gonna be approved by the board, or by
Closed
the
versus
building
open.
department.
Open means it's
Oh,
pickets at
okay,
the
that
top,
doesn't-
closed means it's a rail at the top.
And it's gonna be approved by the building department, so whatever they determine meets the 80% visibility, that's what we're going
Yeah, but
with.
we still need a
Right.
second.
So it doesn't matter if it's
I
open
need
or
a second
closed?
on the motion,
Right.
yes.
I
Doesn't
would
matter
not
if it's open or
use-
closed, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Don't use the term open or
Yeah.
closed, nothing, just
Picket
visibility.
fence.
But you understand what needs to be provided with. the
It doesn't even have to be a picket fence, it has to be the visibility, it has to meet the visibility, whatever they come up with that meets the visibility is fine with us.
Okay, so the
We're
final.
granting them a 4-foot fence,
4-foot fence.
if this motion passes, yes, I need a second on this.
Yeah,
Particular
down here,
motion.
yeah, so that's clearly what the difference is.
I can't second it, I brought it.
Yes, you need somebody else to second.
I'll second that one.
Second by Ms. Petrie. On the question. Clerk, please call the roll.
Fullwiler,
Yes.
Lemay,
No.
Petrie,
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes. Motion passes 3-1. Okay, so you understand where we're at?
Yes, but do I need to submit another permit application now?
No,
I
no,
need to
no,
get
no.
another-
No, you just
Nope.
need to submit, well, you need to submit.
Why don't you speak to Gary after the meeting, or
Sure.
maybe he can speak to you right now
Fence
outside.
permit application needs to be revised, so
Okay.
it either meets the code totally, or it meets the conditions.
Okay,
uh,
so I'll bring in a new one to Carol with what it's going to be, and then it goes to the building department
Yes.
after that. Okay, I understand.
The
Okay.
fence permit application, not the variance.
Yes, and is it another $50, like with the new application, or?
No,
is it- Okay.
no.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, the next one, 62.5 Mill Street. What is your pleasure on that? And this is for a variance for a 3.1 foot side yard where a minimum, so it's a 2-foot variance, is it correct? Yes.
I'll make a motion to grant an area variance.
Motion by Ms. Petrie,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Lemay. On the question. Clerk, please call the roll.
Fullwiler,
Yes.
Lemay,
Yes.
Petrie,
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes. Motion passes 4-0.
I'm sorry, who made the motion again?
Ms.
No, I didn't.
Ms.
Petrie,
Petrie,
seconded by
second by
Lemay.
Mr. Lemay, seconded.
Now, since we got so many applications for fence height, can't we ask the board to somehow redraft
Can.
this in consideration of the type of lots, corner lots and all that stuff?
Could do, yeah, because the corner lots have been a problem. They've changed that law. I know they've changed it over the last 30 years. They've
Well,
changed
if
it a
only
couple
if we
times.
had a board member here.
You're
Well,
right.
yeah, that's true.
For one more meeting.
There is,
For one more meeting, right?
there is a list of zoning, housekeeping clarifications on the whiteboard in the other room.
And the visibility is on there?
Good.
Yes.
So, I'm gonna talk to Amy, she's
So,
on my street.
Is there anything else to be brought before the board, this board here? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Actually, before I do that,
So
I
it's
know we
Ron.
are losing our liaison. But thank you for the time you were with us. Appreciate your help.
Appreciate it. I learned a lot.
I guess my only question is, did we get anywhere on short-term rentals? Was it discussed?
Moratorium is extended, it's gonna be reviewed.
It is a
part of
mor-
the comp
There
plan.
is a moratorium.
There's a moratorium. in place.
Okay, good,
Has been now for about 8 months.
okay.
The last village board meeting, we,
And while that's in place, not only can we not entertain an application, but the village can't do anything about the existing ones. The existing.
No, the existing ones, they can go after the existing ones. yeah.
Enforcement of
Except for the,
moratorium just
Except for
prevents
the ones
anybody-
that we
three legal,
approved.
the three legal ones that we approved.
Okay, so while the moratorium is on, they actually can go against.
Before, okay.
They can go after them.
We'll go after them for what?
No, they can operate
no,
Oh,
legally.
that's what
No,
I
those
was
four
asking.
can, but the
Yeah.
other rest.
Not the other
rest of them.
50 that are
They're,
advertised.
That's
they're
what I'm
operating without a
asking.
permit.
So
Yeah.
the board
They're not-
is, but we're not doing anything about those.
Well, that's a code enforcement.
They're supposed to be doing something about it, hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was hysterical that the realtor at that house next to South Long on Milton, that last house, that little
Yes,
tiny
yeah,
one,
yeah,
yeah.
was actively promoting that this was an Airbnb.
Wow.
Were they really?
Yes.
Yeah, they do, because there's no repercussions.
No, just,
Because unless the village has the resources to go out and.
Right. it's tough to
But
find.
if the neighbors complain, that would incite the
If
town
somebody
to.
has intelligence on them, call the building department.
Carol needs to vote.
Yes, oh, I thought we did.
Second the adjournment.
Oh, somebody made a
Oh, oh.
motion?
Well, I withdrew it because he had a question,
I'll
so.
second or make it, whatever you need.
Motion by Ms. Fuller, second by Mr. Lemay to adjourn. All in favor?
Ah,
Thank you. Thank you for coming, folks.
Does this have to go back to? the-
Yeah, I'm gonna figure out what Carol needs and what she doesn't need out of all that mess. It's a lot there.
Problem with that particular one, and I always give up.
You knew, really, and that was part of what I was trying to do. That's also why I was
I
having
agree.
a tough time saying 4-3, when it's like, well, then I gotta grant it to everybody that uses this argument.
Exactly, and I think that's the problem. You know, if it wasn't that street is so, those corner lots are so screwed up over there. I mean, we just gave a person 6-foot fence all the way along the whole street.
Right.
We're not gonna give this guy 4 foot, you know?
Yeah, and, but that was also, it is
Two different.
two different houses.
Yeah, two
Yes,
different
that was very
situations.
Yeah,
different,
and the fact that that fence has been there for however long on the one street.
But I mean, you know, generally these people aren't coming before us, and so we get a lot of these like 2-foot, 1-foot setbacks. I've probably had hundreds of them over the years. So you gotta think, you know, we're,
Oh,
they're asking for a variance. That's what they're coming for. They know it's 3 foot. If they want 4 foot, they don't want their dog jumping over there. They don't want their kid
Then you
climbing.
put in an electric fence.
No, I agree with you.
Or you get the nanny to watch them in the front yard when the kids running around.
Yeah, and
Those just
it's that criteria that
Right,
gets you.
right.
You know, you need to, and you were justified in a couple of them. I don't disagree with you.
The examples that they showed are different scenarios.
Yes, yes.
Because the one house, it's a very small side yard.
But if you go up there, did you see the one that has the 6-foot fence that comes out?
Yes,
into
and
the-
that aggravates me because
That was
that's
granted by the
unworthy. That was
zoning board.
granted.
I can remember I voted against it, but it was granted.
And
I
I
don't
Their
wondered,
neighbor's house has it too.
Yeah, yeah.
and I wondered where there's conditions because supposedly she's tried to grow some plants out there and they both died
Well,
because she never pays any attention because she can't water
because
them.
I am actually
You
working
know,
on it
but that one
It's a tough one.
is
It's a tough one.
now, and one of the
is
things Jeff
offensive.
wanted in there was no chicken farm.
Well, and that's kind of why I told her
I didn't
too.
put that in there.
You have court action here, but we can't help you with that.
Exactly.
You go after the fencing guy.
Well,
and, you know,
I know, and I almost voted no for that reason alone, and say, look, you know, you need to go after your, like, first of all, you didn't get a permitting.
The contract
Did all kinds
she
of,
signed says she's responsible for the permits.
really?
I probably
Did
have
you
it
read
still
some of the
open.
notes next to some of those things?
Oh, there is
She
a
wrote
copy.
that he said he would get a permit or something like that.
Yeah,
It does say that she would get
That's
it.
terrible when somebody,
it is. It's a mess, and that, I mean, that lady was in tears when she left here.
I know.
God, she didn't get the.
On the other hand, when you think you're getting something, National Grid put in new lines.
Yeah,
in my-
yeah, why didn't
Okay,
they
so
put
here's-
the flags, right?
So here's the deal, okay? The contract with the concrete company is also a landscaping contract. And I have been calling them, they don't even want to hear from me anymore. Because the requirement is that the landscaping company take out 3 feet of 3 inches of the crap that was the clay and all.